You don't relate to the world the same way most people do today. And it's not because you're nostalgic or resistant to change or clinging to some imagined better past. It's because you were conditioned differently. Your brain was wired in an environment that no longer exists. And that wiring doesn't just go away. If you're Generation X, you grew up in a world that required something from you that modern life has engineered out of existence. Independence without a safety net. Picture this. You're 8 years old. It's summer. Your parents don't know where you are. Not because they don't care, but because there's no way for them to know. No phone, no tracker, no check-ins. You left the house in the morning and you'll come back when the streetlights come on. That's the rule. Everything in between is yours to navigate. You're not just playing. You're learning to read situations, to assess risk, to make decisions without input. You don't have someone telling you what's safe. You have to feel it. You develop instincts. You notice things. The tone of a voice, the posture of a stranger, the edge in someone's mood. You learn to trust yourself because there's no one else to ask. This wasn't freedom for its own sake. It was a gap, and you filled it with awareness. Now compare that to a childhood where every movement is monitored, every risk is mitigated, every question is answered instantly by a device. It's not better or worse, it's just fundamentally different. One builds an internal compass, the other builds reliance on external systems. You are also expected to solve problems yourself, not abstract problems, real ones. The VCR doesn't work, the bike chain fell off, the flashlight died. You didn't call someone, you opened it. You touched the parts, you tried things, and most of the time, you figured it out. There was no YouTube tutorial, no Reddit thread, no customer service line, just you, the object, and the expectation that you'd handle it. And when you did, no one praised you. It was assumed. Competence wasn't celebrated, it was baseline. That taught you something crucial. The world is mechanical, it operates on logic, and if you pay attention, you can interact with it directly. You don't need permission, you don't need validation, you need curiosity and persistence. This is why so many of you still prefer to fix things yourself, why you distrust outsourcing basic tasks, why you feel uneasy when everything is automated and you can't see how it works. It's not stubbornness, it's pattern recognition. You were trained to engage with systems, not delegate to them. And then there's pain. You got hurt as a kid, you fell, you crashed, you bled, and unless it was serious, no one panicked. You were told to get up, to walk it off, to clean it and keep going. Not because your parents were cold, but because pain was understood as part of learning. You learned the difference between hurt and harm, between discomfort and danger. That distinction is fading now. Today, minor pain is often treated as trauma. Emotional discomfort is pathologized. Risk itself is seen as irresponsible. But you were raised in a world where skinned knees, bruised egos, and bad calls were just feedback. They weren't catastrophes. They were information. And because you lived through them without catastrophizing, you built resilience. Not the Instagram kind. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't announce itself. You also developed your social skills without a screen. Every interaction was face-to-face, in real time, with real consequences. You couldn't delete what you said. You couldn't block someone and pretend they didn't exist. If you screwed up, you had to deal with it the next day, at school, at the park, in the neighborhood. That forced you to learn emotional regulation, to read a room, to negotiate conflict without an audience, to apologize when it mattered, to hold your ground when it didn't. You built a reputation slowly, through behavior, not branding. There was no performance layer, no curated identity. You were just you, messy, inconsistent, trying to figure it out. And because no one was documenting it, you had room to fail privately, to evolve quietly, to become someone without having to explain every version of yourself along the way. That privacy shaped you. It gave you an internal sense of self that didn't depend on external validation. You didn't need likes to know who you were. You didn't need comments to confirm your thoughts. You built your identity in silence, and that made it yours. You also learned that time was scarce. If you missed something, it was gone. The show aired once. The concert happened once. If you weren't there, you didn't experience it. There was no recording, no recap, no second chance. That taught you presence. It taught you to pay attention, to show up, to prioritize, because everything was temporary. And because it was temporary, it mattered more. Now nothing is scarce. Everything is archived, replayed, available on demand. That's convenient. But it also flattens meaning. When you can access anything at any time, nothing feels urgent. Nothing feels precious. You were raised in urgency, and it made you sharper. You also had to remember things: phone numbers, addresses, directions, facts. If you didn't memorize it, you didn't have it. There was no cloud, no search bar, no autosave. Your brain was the storage system. That meant you practiced recall constantly. You exercised memory. You built mental maps. And because of that, you developed deeper focus. You could sit with one task for hours. You didn't need constant stimulation. You weren't afraid of boredom. Boredom was normal. And in that boredom, you learned to think. Your first job wasn't hypothetical. It was real. You showed up. You did the work. You got paid in cash. And if you messed up, it affected someone else's day, not a metric. A person, that built accountability. You learned that effort had value, that reliability mattered, that people depended on you, not in an abstract way, in a tangible, immediate way. And that shaped how you saw yourself. It gave you dignity, not from what you owned, but from what you could do. And here's the part that matters most. You became who you are without an audience. You made mistakes no one recorded. You experimented with identity in private. You grew in the dark. And because of that, your sense of self is internal. It's not curated. It's not performative. It's not fragile. You don't need the world to affirm you. You already know who you are. That's not arrogance. It's just groundedness. And in a world that's increasingly unmoored, that's rare. So when you feel out of step with modern life, it's not because you're outdated. It's because you were built for a different set of conditions. You were trained to trust yourself, to solve problems, to handle discomfort, to focus deeply, to show up, to remember, to fail quietly and try again. Those things aren't obsolete. They're just undervalued right now, but they're not going anywhere, and neither are you. You're not broken. You're not behind. You're wired differently, and that wiring still works. It's just calibrated for reality, not performance, for presence, not platforms, for depth, not speed, and that's not something to apologize for. That's something to trust.